Welcome to this episode of Tech I Spy, your companion in decoding the companies quietly transforming the world around us. If you've ever stood near a construction site and wondered how a skyscraper rises with such precision, or watched a tractor in an open field working all on its own, then you've already seen the invisible hand of today's featured company. This is Trimble Incorporated, and what they do might just surprise you. Trimble isn't a consumer tech brand. You won't find them selling gadgets or going viral on social media. But behind the scenes, they're revolutionizing how cities are built, how food is grown, how transport systems flow, and how maps are drawn. They are engineers for engineers, a digital backbone for infrastructure, agriculture, logistics, and land management. And in this episode, we're going deep. We'll explore who Trimble really is and why this long-established tech firm still flies under the radar for most investors. We'll break down their strengths, the real technological edge that allows them to operate in space, on land, and across industries. Then we'll shift focus to their weaknesses, from complex legacy systems to limited public visibility. As we move into opportunities, we'll open the door to a world where Trimble could lead the charge in digital twins, AI-guided construction, and fully autonomous agriculture. And finally, we'll confront the threats, because no company, no matter how seasoned, is safe from the ever-changing terrain of tech disruption and economic headwinds. So if you're an investor looking for the companies building the literal foundations of tomorrow, or a tech enthusiast curious about the quiet innovators transforming our landscapes, stick around. There's a lot more to Trimble than meets the eye. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to Tech I Spy. This channel is powered by deep dive research, and it's part of a wider universe of investment intelligence that includes our book series, available exclusively on Amazon Kindle. You'll find detailed insights into tech sectors like quantum computing, fintech, and space, all told in the same monologue style you're hearing now. Check out the links in the description if you want to expand your edge. All right, let's get started. This is the SWOT analysis of Trimble Incorporated. Trimble's greatest strength lies in something that's both subtle and powerful. They make other industries smarter. You won't see their name on a smartphone or a billboard. What you'll find is their technology running inside the heart of construction sites, farms, survey teams, transport fleets, and energy projects all over the world. And they don't just sell tools. What Trimble actually offers is a full nervous system for physical industries, a network of hardware, software, and connected services that brings precision, efficiency, and automation into places that used to rely on gut instinct and guesswork. Let's start with their origins. Trimble was founded in the late 1972, originally working with GPS long before the general public knew what that even was. Over the years, they evolved from satellite positioning specialists into a kind of industrial brain trust. Today, they operate in 4 core areas: construction, agriculture, geospatial, and transportation. That might sound scattered, but this diversity is exactly what makes them resilient. It's like they've mapped out the physical economy and chosen the areas with the most friction, then quietly gone about smoothing them out. One example is their work in construction. If you imagine a modern building site, the coordination of machinery, materials, and workers is a logistical nightmare. Trimble's systems bring order to that chaos. They provide GNSS-guided tools for surveying land, 3D laser scanning to model environments, and field to office platforms that sync everyone from site managers to architects. They're one of the few companies that truly understand what it means to digitize construction in real time. And it's not just about maps or GPS anymore, it's full digital control over what happens on the ground, minute by minute. In agriculture, they've taken a similar approach. You might hear terms like precision farming or autonomous tractors in the news? Well, Trimble is behind much of the backbone tech that makes those things possible. Their positioning systems can guide farm equipment down to centimetre level accuracy. They help farmers optimize yield, reduce waste, and map soil variation across massive fields. When we talk about feeding a growing global population while reducing environmental damage, these aren't abstract dreams. This is the kind of on-the-ground reality Trimble enables. Geospatial tech is another area where they excel, and it's more than just mapping. Their tools are used by surveyors, engineers, architects, and urban planners. The point here is speed and accuracy, capturing a digital twin of the real world and using that to plan, test, and execute major infrastructure projects. They don't just sell one scanner or app, they sell a whole digital workflow. From the drone that scans the landscape to the software that turns it into a usable 3D model, Trimble provides end-to-end capability. Then there's transportation and logistics. Fleet managers need to know where their vehicles are, how efficiently they're running, and how to reduce downtime. Trimble's systems plug into all of that. From freight rail to long-haul trucking, they offer telematics, route planning, fuel monitoring, and compliance tools, all of which save time and money, especially at large scale. What ties all this together is integration. That's the word you keep coming back to with Trimble. They don't just make one piece of tech, they connect dozens of technologies across the full life cycle of a project or operation. And that integration creates lock-in. Once a company is using Trimble's ecosystem, from field sensors to cloud analytics, it becomes hard to switch to something else. That's good news for investors because it creates predictable revenue, especially with their increasing push into subscription-based software services. They've also got deep industry partnerships, and this matters more than it sounds. Caterpillar, John Deere, and other giants have worked with Trimble to embed positioning and guidance systems into heavy equipment. That's not something you do with a fly-by-night software firm. It's a sign of trust, engineering excellence, and long-term strategic thinking. One final point here, Trimble has built up a strong foundation in sustainability without necessarily marketing itself as a green company. By helping farms use less fertilizer, or construction crews avoid costly rework, or fleets cut down on emissions, they're naturally positioned to benefit from the global ESG movement without needing to rebrand or pivot. They're already part of the solution. All of this combines into a powerful moat. Trimble doesn't chase headlines, but they build the tools that help real industries work better. And in a world that's shifting towards smart infrastructure, automation, and precision systems, that quiet consistency might just be the strongest card of all. Trimble's agricultural tech is impressive, no doubt about that. But it's also where some of the company's biggest weaknesses begin to show. Let's be clear, agriculture is a tough industry for innovation. It's fragmented, seasonal, politically sensitive, and incredibly price-sensitive. And while Trimble offers world-class precision tools for farming, they're not always operating in a world that's ready or willing to adopt them. One of the biggest problems is accessibility. Precision agriculture depends on expensive hardware GPS antennas, correction signal subscriptions, smart implements, rugged displays, and none of that comes cheap. For large-scale industrial farms in North America or Australia, this can be justified. But for the average farmer in South America, India, Eastern Europe, or even parts of the US Midwest, the price tag can be a deal-breaker. Trimble's tech can often feel like a luxury instead of a necessity, and in agriculture, that distinction matters. There's also a problem of complexity. Even when the hardware is available, using it effectively requires a level of digital literacy and systems integration that many farms just don't have. This isn't a knock on farmers, it's about infrastructure. Some farms don't have reliable cellular data or Wi-Fi in the fields. Others operate older equipment that isn't compatible with Trimble's modern modules. When Trimble talks about field-to-cloud workflows, it sounds great in a boardroom, but in the real world, there are tractors running on 3 zero-year-old engines and no broadband for 50 miles. And then, there's the issue of scale. Trimble tends to build for enterprise users. Their tools are designed with the assumption that the buyer is managing tens of thousands of acres, not a small family farm or co-op. That makes their ecosystem more robust, but also more intimidating. Farmers who just want to know when to water their crops or how to save fuel can be put off by the amount of configuration, calibration, and ongoing management that Trimble's systems demand. In trying to offer everything, they risk making entry feel like too much work. Trimble also faces brand confusion in this space. They're not a seed company, they're not an equipment manufacturer, they're not an input supplier. So where do they sit in the agricultural value chain? To many farmers, they're still seen as a tech add-on, not a core partner. That perception makes them vulnerable. If a big name like John Deere decides to build its own closed-loop guidance and software systems, something Deere is already moving toward, Trimble could get squeezed out of some of its most important partnerships. They've already felt this in recent years, as more equipment OEMs move to own the full data chain themselves. There's also a regional problem. Trimble is heavily weighted toward mature markets, where farming is already tech-heavy places like the US, Canada, and Australia. But the real growth in agriculture is coming from developing regions. And that's where Trimble hasn't made the same inroads. Other companies, especially local startups, or mobile-first platforms, are stepping into those spaces with simpler, cheaper, more mobile-friendly solutions that Trimble's legacy systems just don't match. Lastly, Trimble's focus on hardware leaves them open to disruption from software-first players. Apps that run on smartphones or plug into standard data feeds can often provide 80% of the functionality for a fraction of the cost. And in tight-margin sectors like agriculture, that remaining 20%, while technically superior, might not justify the added expense. If someone can deliver good enough results with a much lower capital outlay, Trimble's high-spec systems could start to feel bloated. So while Trimble has the tools to lead in precision ag, the reality is more complicated. They're trying to digitize one of the most tradition-bound sectors in the world, and the speed at which farmers adopt new tech doesn't always match the pace of Trimble's product development. And that friction, the gap between what's possible and what's practical, may be the company's Achilles heel in agriculture. Here's where things get interesting. Because for all of Trimble's challenges in agriculture, the opportunity on the table is absolutely massive. And it's mostly about money. Big money, on both sides of the equation. Let's look at the industry first. Agriculture isn't optional. It's not a trend or a bubble. It's the one sector that literally feeds every other one. And the global demand for food is growing fast. At the same time, arable land is shrinking. Climate patterns are becoming more erratic, and water resources are under pressure. That's a recipe for a global farming overhaul. And the only way to meet future demand is with smarter, leaner, more precise systems, which just happens to be Trimble's speciality. By 2030, the precision agriculture market alone is expected to be worth well over $20 billion. And that's just the precision part. The overall ag-tech market, which includes sensors, drones, robotics, analytics, and automation, could surpass $40 to $50 billion, depending on who you ask. This isn't theory. Governments are pouring funding into food resilience, and private equity is circling farmland like it's the next oil field. There's capital looking for scalable, data-driven, infrastructure-grade solutions. And that's exactly the kind of offering Trimble has spent decades quietly perfecting. Now let's zoom in on Trimble itself. This is a company with existing relationships in place, proprietary hardware platforms, and a growing SaaS ecosystem that's already embedded in real-world operations. That means recurring revenue. That means upselling. That means predictable cash flow at enterprise level. With the global trend shifting from product sales to service models, Trimble is positioned to convert what used to be one-off hardware purchases into bundled long-term contracts. And when you're managing thousands of acres or running entire supply chains, that's the kind of consistency that CFOs and investors love. There's also momentum inside Trimble to lean deeper into the software side, particularly around data integration and predictive analytics. That's where margins explode. Once the hardware's in place, once the tractors are talking to the satellites and the sensors are sending signals, the real value comes from what you do with that data. Trimble is already building the platforms to ingest, analyze, and monetize it. Think crop forecasting, logistics optimization, variable rate fertilization, and even carbon market eligibility. Each of those is a revenue stream in waiting. And here's the kicker: Trimble doesn't have to invent a new market. They just need to capture more of the one they're already in. Their existing customer base represents billions in latent value if they can push those clients toward fuller adoption of Trimble's full-stack systems. Most farms, fleets, or construction outfits that already use a bit of Trimble tech haven't gone all in. But as labor shortages, environmental regulation, and ESG reporting become non-negotiable across the supply chain, full automation and traceability will stop being a nice-to-have and start being required. That's when Trimble stops being an optional vendor and becomes an operational backbone. There's also a very real opportunity in partnerships. Major equipment manufacturers are racing to future-proof their offerings, and Trimble can serve as the digital layer on top of their mechanical platforms. That opens the door to embedded tech royalties, subscription models, and co-branded solutions that scale globally. And unlike a flashy startup, Trimble already has the scale, trust, and supply chain discipline to make those deals actually work in the field. So while the world worries about inflation, weather volatility, food security, and resource scarcity, Trimble sees opportunity. They're not chasing hype cycles, they're selling picks and shovels to an industry that's finally realizing the gold rush has already begun. If they can keep bundling their solutions, converting legacy customers into software clients, and expanding into underserved regions with scalable pricing models, the financial upside is enormous. And for investors paying attention, that slow and steady approach might just be the smartest play in the agtech game. Trimble might be sitting on a treasure trove of opportunity, but the road ahead is far from smooth, and it's not just about market competition or technology gaps. The real threats come from deeper places, from politics, from culture, from ethics, and from the land itself. Start with tradition. Agriculture is one of the oldest human activities on the planet, and in many places, it's still deeply rooted in family customs, local rhythms, and generational knowledge. That makes innovation in this space feel, at times, like an intruder. Trimble's tech promises efficiency, data, and precision, but to a farmer who's worked the same fields for decades without a data plan or a software dashboard, this can look more like interference than improvement. If the tools don't feel intuitive or respectful of how farmers already work, they risk being ignored. No matter how good the return on investment looks on paper, that cultural resistance plays out differently in different countries. In the US, it might be about distrust of Silicon Valley or a desire for independence from corporate ecosystems. In Europe, it could clash with strict data privacy laws or deeply entrenched farming subsidies that don't incentivize modernization. In Asia and Africa, where farming is often communal or subsistence-based, the cost and complexity of Trimble's systems can appear tone-deaf to local needs. And where language, literacy, or trust in institutions is fragile, a complicated tech product is a hard sell. Now, add politics to the mix. Agriculture is deeply political. It's tied to land rights, national food security, subsidy regimes, trade agreements, and increasingly, climate policy. If a government decides to shift its agricultural strategy, say, by banning a particular input, redefining land use, or subsidizing a local competitor, Trimble's entire business model in that region can be destabilized overnight. Precision tech may be efficient, but if it depends on data that regulators decide to restrict, or if foreign ownership laws change, or if trade routes are blocked, the ripple effects hit fast and hard. Then there's the environmental paradox. Trimble positions itself as a green enabler, less fertilizer, less fuel, more yield. But the company operates in a system that is under global pressure to reinvent itself entirely. Industrial agriculture is being blamed for biodiversity loss, greenhouse gas emissions, soil degradation, and water scarcity. And no matter how efficient Trimble makes it, if the entire model of monoculture farming comes under threat, the tools that support it are also at risk. There's growing support for regenerative farming, low-tech permaculture, and even a return to manual methods in some activist circles. If public sentiment swings hard enough, Trimble may find itself selling tools for a version of agriculture that's no longer seen as desirable. Ethics is another minefield. As Trimble pushes into data-heavy operations, concerns about surveillance, data ownership, and AI decision-making will only grow. Farmers might be uncomfortable with their planting schedules, yield forecasts, or soil profiles being uploaded and stored in the cloud, particularly if they're not the ones in control of that data. In some countries, that discomfort will cross into legal territory. Who owns agricultural data? What happens if it's hacked, sold, or used to manipulate prices? These aren't abstract questions anymore, they're becoming front-page issues. Let's not forget labor. Automation sounds great for productivity, but it has a human cost. In regions where farm labor is a major employer, replacing people with machines can lead to economic displacement, protests, or even sabotage. If Trimble is seen as the company that brought in the machines and took away the jobs, its tech could become a target, not a solution. And finally, natural threats, the ones you can't engineer your way out of. Climate change is not just a business opportunity, it's also a business threat. More frequent droughts, floods, and extreme weather events could damage the very infrastructure Trimble relies on. GPS signals don't work in hurricanes. Satellites don't compensate for washed-out roads or destroyed equipment. If farming becomes more chaotic and less predictable, the value of precision tools may actually fall, not rise. You can't optimize a system that's being hit with random shocks every other week. So while Trimble is undoubtedly smart, capable, and forward-thinking, it is not immune. It operates in a world of politics, people, and natural forces. If it fails to adapt to changing expectations about who controls data, how land is used, and what kind of future we want to build, then all the smart tech in the world won't be enough to protect it. That's the risk. Not just competition from rivals, but rejection from the very people and systems it's trying to serve. So where does that leave us? Trimble is one of those rare companies quietly engineering the foundations of tomorrow out of the spotlight, but deeply embedded in the systems that keep the world moving. From guiding autonomous tractors across dusty fields to helping construction teams align steel and concrete with satellite-level precision, Trimble isn't chasing headlines, it's chasing accuracy, efficiency, Control. It's building the digital scaffolding for industries that don't usually get the tech spotlight. But that doesn't mean it's immune to failure or blind to risk. Agriculture in particular is a sector with deep cultural roots, political entanglements, and ethical grey zones. And Trimble, for all its power and potential, still faces the same challenge every tech company eventually does, making sure that what it builds doesn't just work, but also belongs. If it gets that balance right, if it listens as well as it calculates, Trimble could be a long-term winner in a space where a lot of companies burn out chasing hype. But if it over-engineers the problem, or overlooks the human reality on the ground, it could find itself sidelined by simpler, more adaptable solutions. The tech is sound. The question now is strategy. Thanks for listening to this episode of Tech I Spy. If you found value in the analysis, please consider subscribing and sharing the channel. And if you want to dive even deeper into the world of tech investing, our full book series is available on Amazon Kindle with exclusive titles covering quantum computing, fintech, space, death tech, and more, all designed for investors like you who want more than just surface-level hype. Check the links in the description. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and keep your eye on the tech.